Section 2 of Stanton White, A Romance of the New South, by Asa Zadel Hall. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 2, The Flight. As I walked along the wharf on my way to the train, my imagination ran riot, conjuring up every conceivable predicament in which I might be placed if I were to befriend the unfortunate roustabout. Had I been given time for calmer reflection, I doubtless would have taken less interest in the case. But the events of the evening were yet vivid in my mind, and it seemed to me then that it would be the height of injustice to suffer the fellow to be tried and condemned as a malicious felon, when there seemed to be plenty of evidence to the contrary. Perhaps I was the more interested because I had serious thought of making the profession of law my life work. Here was a case in which to gain my first practical knowledge of criminal law. I tortured myself with the thought that perhaps the news had been telegraphed to the capital, and another mob had been more successful than the first in their attempt to defeat the law. But then, I thought, possibly someone else had telegraphed the authorities, so that ample police protection had been afforded. Who would be sufficiently thoughtful thus to telegraph when the sheriff and his posse were imprisoned in the burning building? Then a picture of the conflagration, with the encircling crowd gazing in silence at the havoc they had wrought, flashed again before my mind's eye. What should I do after I had reached the capital? My conjectures and forebodings made me unaware of a dark form lurking in the shadow of a warehouse. Before I could cry out or escape, a hand covered my mouth and a brawny arm encircled me so that struggle was in vain. I was drawn back into the shadow toward the water's edge. I expected to be thrown down and robbed, or pitched headlong into the dark water. But instead, a low voice, tremulous with excitement, said, "Oh, sir, you doesn't know me, no I you. Yet this afternoon when I seen you on the wharf, you looked sort of kind. I done got away from the officers and come down here, for it seemed powerful lonely here. I can't get out of the city without help, for I reckon every street am being watched by the regulators. Oh, sir, can't y'all help me get out of here?" He released my mouth as he spoke. I was too weak from fright to answer for a moment. Then I said quietly, "I will try." "I's well obliged," he said with evident relief. "Have you any old clothes here that I can put on?" he said. "Yes, here is a coat and cap which will serve that purpose," said I, opening my suitcase. "I'll tote y'all's satchel," he said, when he was arrayed in the novel attire. "That is, if I can do it and not rip this here coat up the back." As we stepped out into the light, the droll figure he cut with arms extending far beyond the sleeves and shoulders drawn well back proved too much for my risibilities, and I laughed outright. Northward, keeping near to the river, we went, at first moving cautiously and keeping in the shadow of the buildings as much as possible. But gathering confidence as we went, when we neared the city limits, we walked along quite unconcernedly, talking in low tones of our plans of escape. From the riverside we emerged upon a country road. Here we were stopped by a masked horseman, who demanded our names and destination. I told him that I was not in the habit of having to tell my name, that I had come to the city to see some of my friends who sent their man out to carry my satchel for me and show the way, that we had stopped to see the fire, and hence were late in getting started. "Tell that to someone what's easy," said the man with the mask. "But I'm D-blank sure I saw both you on the wharf this evening. You're my prisoners," said he, bringing his rifle to his shoulder. Turning suddenly sick with fear, I caught a glimpse of my companion clearing the roadside fence at a single leap. Instantly I followed. A bullet grazed my cheek. I heard the thud of the horses' hoofs as they struck the ground on my side of the fence. We were but 3 rods in advance, yet shielded by darkness. Another report from the rifle. My companion just in front of me stumbled and rolled over, but was up again before I was abreast of him. We seemed to be standing still in our flight. The breathing of the horse could be heard but a rod behind, and there was the sound of the approach of horses from all sides. Bushes here and there favored our flight. Hugging the river bank, we hurried on while the horses floundered more slowly after us. As I was abandoning hope, the ground over which we sped grew boggy. On up the river we fled with tired feet and fast-beating hearts, and ears strained to catch every sound of approaching danger. Through thick underbrush which tore our clothes and scratched our hands, through bogs into which we sank at every step. On we rushed, now running, now leaping from place to place, and again walking when too exhausted to run more. Every snapping of twigs, every rustling of leaves added to our fear. The very moon seemed to mock us. The stars laughed sleepily at us, as if confident of our capture. As moon and stars began to fade, and the first streaks of gray glimmered in the east, we stumbled upon something hidden in a clump of bushes. A boat. We were too tired to shout, and we would not have dared if strength had remained. Our hopes ran high. For the first time since we had been pursued, did we venture to speak. "Now, if we can only find the oars," said I. My sentence was not finished. "Listen," said my companion, putting his hand to his ear. I listened intently in the direction in which he turned, and I heard a faint baying miles away. "Bloodhounds," said he, with yet deeper fear written on his face. "Here's a paddle," he exclaimed, drawing one from underneath the boat. "No time to look for oars now. Just help me push the boat down." In a moment we were off, the mist from the river hiding our movements. Starting in a diagonal direction, we intended to cross to a point a mile or so upstream. But once out in the river, our movements became uncertain because of the mist. It was with difficulty that we made our way across, guided as we were largely by the current. On reaching the opposite shore, we skirted the bank at a safe distance, proceeding upstream for 2 or 3 miles, as we supposed. When the mists began to rise, we drew up at a point which seemed deserted, and, setting the boat adrift that it might not betray our landing place, we proceeded again on foot. Taking care to keep at a safe distance from the shore to escape the notice of any pursuers on the other side, we plodded on, discussing the various methods of escape. "Well," said I, trying hard to appear cheerful, "Fortune has favored us thus far, and if she doesn't go back on us now, we'll be all right." He turned a despairing face upon me. "You all can get away, but not with me. I'll help's far as I can, but when we gets where folks sees us, y'all be better off alone. I's 'stremely 'bliged for your assistance, but 'tain't no use no longer. I'll tote y'all's case to near yonder house," designating a small farmhouse just coming into view. "They'll go with you to the train, and den the North'em not powerful far away. By'n by the news come dere's one colored man less." "No," I thundered, turning upon him so fiercely that he started in surprise. "I told you last night I'd help you, and whatever other faults I may have, no one knows me for a confounded liar. If you are captured, they'll have to take me too." His face brightened, and a new vigor seemed to come into his frame. Tears rushed to his eyes, and bore silent witness to his gratitude. Then I noticed for the first time that blood was oozing from his left arm near the shoulder. An old handkerchief tied thereabout was saturated and stiff with blood. "It's just a tetch," said he. Well, I guess we'll have to fix you up a bit before we get out among folks. You aren't in first-class condition to stand the fatigue of walking, either," I said solicitously. He then proposed that we go into the woods or swamps, sleep until night, and travel under cover of darkness. To this I did not agree, claiming that our safety lay in haste rather than in seclusion. I then bandaged the arm as carefully as I could with fresh handkerchiefs. "For the time being, you'd better act as my servant whenever we're anywhere to be seen," said I at length. "And I'll put up a bluff that we've been on a fishing excursion, and that I took you along to help carry stuff. We got lost from the rest of the party, and have been tramping around all morning trying to find them. I'll make inquiries as to whether they've been seen, and then try to hire some farmer to take us to the nearest town, where we may catch a train." At the first farm, we failed to find anyone around. I was so ravenously hungry that I favored looting the pantry, but to this my companion objected, begging me not to lay myself liable to arrest by anything done on this side of the river. I listened to his entreaties, and we trudged on. Near the next house we found an old man busy in the field. To him I told my tale with seeming success, for he went with us to the house, and while we ate a hot breakfast prepared by his good wife — there never was another such breakfast in all the realms of culinary achievement — he made ready the horses and wagon, and we were soon jolting away on our 15-mile ride to the depot. Fortunately, the bed of the wagon was filled with straw, and an old blanket screened us from the fierce heat of the sun while we slept. When I at last awoke, the wagon had come to a standstill, and I heard voices near at hand. My companion was still asleep, and I did not have the heart to disturb him. As the noises from without did not sound threatening, I ventured to sit upright and look about. It was a Four Corners, with perhaps a dozen houses in sight. Our wagon was drawn up before the only store. While the horses were drinking from the dirty-looking trough, the farmer was bickering with the storekeeper for a lunch. Seized by a sudden idea, I too joined the group, and eagerly priced several articles more or less desirable. I procured for myself 2 canvas hunting jackets and caps, and a shotgun with several rounds of ammunition. I then explained to the farmer that if our companions rallied me about getting lost, that I'd have some big stories fixed up about a hunting expedition and what I shot. He took it as a good joke and laughed heartily. The depot was but 3 miles from here. My companion woke up in time to don his hunting outfit and take charge of the gun, which I was careful to instruct him how to handle, keeping up a continuous flow of small talk the while so as to cover the seriousness of our intent. At the edge of the village where we were to take the train, we dismissed our hospitable farmer with a generous greenback and hearty thanks for his service. I considered that we would attract less attention and encounter less suspicion if we walked to the depot than if we were carried there in the wagon. But this precaution came near proving our undoing. Everywhere we were the center of curious eyes. Our equipment seemed to be somewhat novel and excited much comment. As we neared the depot, we were unexpectedly confronted by an officer bidding us halt in the name of the law. For answer, my companion brought the gun quickly to his shoulder. Checking his hasty movement by my hand, I demanded in as calm a tone as I could muster, "On what charge do you halt us?" "I do not halt you, but your servant, as a lawbreaker." Then, noting my puzzled look, he added, "You know, we don't allow niggers to carry firearms through town, and this fellow's action just now proves the wisdom of the law. If we didn't regulate the action of niggers a little, no white person would dare walk the street." "Oh, well," said I conciliatorily. "You see, we're both strangers here. We were off on a hunting trip down by the river, and got lost from our party. Blamed if we haven't been having the greatest luck. We thought if we didn't get a shot at anything else, we might try one on an escaped nigger. And now, after getting lost and not having a chance to empty our gun at anything, to be arrested for carrying a gun seems to cap the climax. Come, my man, Let Jim off this time. He's a trifle to remember us by. Please don't add to our bad luck." The man seemed to appreciate the humor of the situation, and our evident perturbation stirred his risibilities still more. He chuckled uneasily and seemed half disposed to let the matter pass. "Will it be all right if I carry the gun the rest of the way through town?" said I, growing uneasy as several people began to come toward us. "Certainly. We never object to white folks carrying guns. It's only niggers." As we hurried on our way to the depot, we heard him remark to some of the curious who had now overtaken him, "That fellow's been having hunter's luck." At the depot, during what seemed an interminable waiting for the train's arrival, we were several times questioned by idlers who had somehow learned that we tried to get a shot at the runaway nigger. To reply, I invented 2 or 3 colossal lies, and then, fearing lest some slip might betray us both, I lapsed into silence, saying only to the various inquiries, "We've been hunting, you see, and we've had hard luck." A fellow that's had hard luck doesn't want to talk much about it. At the depot I secured a city paper, and then for the first time I learned the particulars of the escape, colored only as a newspaper can color the truth. Under flaring headlines that occupied about 1/3 of the first page, I read, "It seems that our fair city is just awakening to the fact that it has been the victim of a deep-laid conspiracy, hatched without doubt by some of the most brutal and ignorant Negroes of the place, and executed by means of a large number of accomplices. Notable among these conspirators was an unknown white man who was undoubtedly a shameful anarchist from the North, seeking to excite an uprising among the blacks. His actions did not awaken suspicion at first, but it has been learned from eyewitnesses that it was at a given signal from him that the Negro roustabout yesterday upset another fellow's truck, and thus precipitated upon him the just discipline of the overseer. The second mix-up was due to the same cause, and when our honored citizen, the overseer of the gang, became indignant at a deliberate repetition of the offense and the consequent delay, the Negro only carried out the next step of a concerted arrangement, by brutally striking the overseer and all but murdering him. It was undoubtedly intended that the murderous Negro should escape by way of the river before a crowd could gather, but here the carefully laid plan failed. Before the escape was possible, a throng of public-spirited citizens was upon the offender, and swift justice, the cheapest and most rational justice in all such cases, would have been visited had not some representatives of the law proved themselves obnoxiously overzealous. As for the arch-conspirator, our naive innocence permitted him to mingle unsuspected among the throng that followed the prisoner to the courthouse. He even ventured to question, we are told, our methods of administering justice, but his remarks passed unheeded in the excitement of the hour. Unmolested, the red-handed, deep-dyed villain stood among honest citizens, complacently watching the hungry flames kindled by his fellow conspirators lick up our beautiful public buildings. Unmolested, he took his departure, while the work of havoc went wildly on. In the meantime, the base tool of the baser conspirator, while being conveyed to the depot for transportation to the state capital, jumped from the wagon and eluded his captors. It was not until later in the evening, when the 2 men were seen together near the outskirts of the city, and were stopped by one of our patriotic and heroic guards, that the full extent of the plot began to be realized. A posse of men, afterwards reinforced by bloodhounds, went in hot pursuit, but after following the scent for some distance along the bank, the hounds were baffled. It is thought that some of their confederates had arranged for a boat to conduct them away under cover of darkness. Several Negroes who are suspected of complicity in the plot have been hanged or otherwise disposed of this morning. Our best citizens seem determined to make a clean sweep of the conspirators, and several others may swing before another sunrise. A description of the Negro and myself followed, and some drawings sufficiently grotesque to make me laugh in spite of the many eyes which were upon me. The statement was made and emphasized repeatedly that Seeger, the overseer who was struck, would never leave our trail until both of us were captured or shot. I noted that the Negro was said to be nearly naked, and the strange white man was said to be dressed in a business suit with steamer cap. Both of the men appeared to be unarmed, so far as the newspaper reporter was able to determine, and this was said to be a clever artifice to aid in avoiding suspicion in case of capture. As evening drew on, the long-expected train rolled in, and all was confusion until I had Jim safely stowed away in a Jim Crow car with a ticket for Philadelphia in his hand, while I sought the Pullman, soon to forget the adventures of the past 24 hours in sleep. End of Section 2. Read by James K. White, Chula Vista.